crest of a pyramid for the very first time. When they rose above the tree line and beheld their jungle world unfolded and spread out before them, when they gazed beyond the limits of their territory to the horizon and what lies beyond, they would see the great embracing emptiness above and around. Standing on the point of the pyramid, in the doorway between heaven and earth, there would be no person, no thing, no word between them and the infinite in every direction. Their heart would resonate with the striking symbolism of the scene. Truths would flower and send forth the fragrance of knowing. They would understand their place in their home world, and they would have seen the infinite, the freeing emptiness which embraces it all. Their life would have found its meaning. We all need to grant ourselves the time and the peace to climb that spiritual pyramid inside each one of us, to rise above and beyond the tangled jungle that is our life, if only for a short time. Then we may see for ourselves our place among things, the overview of our life journey, and gaze unimpeded at the infinite in every direction. Precious stones. At a famous US business school some years ago, a professor delivered an extraordinary lecture on social economics to his graduate class. Without explaining what he was doing, the professor carefully placed a glass jar on his desk. Then, in view of his students, he brought out a bag full of stones and placed them one by one in the jar until no more would go in. He asked his students, "Is the jar full?" "Yes," they replied. The professor smiled. From beneath the desk, the professor produced a second bag, this one full of gravel. He then managed to shake the smaller stones into the spaces between the bigger stones in the jar. A second time he asked the students, "Is the jar full?" "No," they answered. They were onto him by now. They were correct, of course, for the professor produced a bag of fine sand. He managed to coax much of the sand into the spaces between the stones and the gravel within the jar. Again he asked, "Is the jar full?" "Probably not, sir, knowing you," the students replied. Smiling at their answer, the professor brought out a small jug of water, which he poured into the jar full of stones, gravel and sand. When no more water would fit in the jar, he put down the jug and looked at his class. "So, what does this teach you?" he asked his students. "That no matter how busy your schedule," offered one of the students, "you can always fit something more in." It was a famous business school, after all. "No," thundered the professor emphatically. "What it shows is that if you want to get the big stones in, you have to put them in first." It was a lesson in priorities. So what are the big stones in your jar? What is most important to fit into your life? Please ensure that you schedule in the precious stones first, or you'll never get round to them to fit them into your day. Then I'll be happy. Perhaps the most precious of stones to have in our jar early, as in the previous story, is inner happiness. When we have no happiness inside us, we have no happiness to give to others. So why do so many of us give such low priority to happiness, postponing it to the very end, or even after the very end, as the following story will show? When I was 14 years old, I was studying for my O-level examinations in a high school in London. My parents and teachers advised me to stop playing soccer in the evenings and weekends, to stay at home instead, giving the time to my homework. They explained how important the O-level exams were, and that if I did well, then I'd be happy. I followed their advice and did very well. But it didn't make me that happy, because my success meant that now I must study even harder for another 2 years for the A-level exams. My parents and teachers advised me to stop going out in the evenings and weekends, to stop chasing girls now rather than chasing a football, and to stay at home instead and study. They told me how important the A-level exams were, and that if I did well, then I'd be happy. Once again, I followed their advice, and did very well. Once again, it didn't make me very happy. because now I had to study hardest of all for 3 more long years for a degree at a university. My mother and teachers, my father was now dead, advised me to steer clear of the bars and parties in college and instead to work hard and long at my studies. They told me how important a university degree was and that if I did well, then I'd be happy. At this point, I started to become suspicious. I saw some of my older friends who had worked very hard and got their degree. Now they were working even harder in their first job. They were working extremely hard to save up enough money to buy something important, say a car. They told me, when I have enough money to buy a car, then I'll be happy. When they had enough funds and had bought their first car, they still weren't happy. Now they were working hard to buy something else, and then they'd be happy. Or they were struggling in the turmoil of romance, looking for a partner in life. They told me, when I get married and settle down, then I'll be happy. Once married, they still weren't happy. They had to work even harder, even taking extra jobs to save up enough money for a deposit on an apartment, or even a small house. They told me, when we have bought our own house, then we'll be happy. Unfortunately, paying off the monthly instalment for the house loan meant that they still weren't very happy. Moreover, they would now start a family. They would have children to wake them up at night, swallow up all their spare money and increase their worries in quantum leaps and bounds. Now it would be another 20 years before they could do what they wanted. So they told me, when the kids are grown up, have left home and settled, then we'll be happy. By the time the kids had left home, most of the parents were staring at retirement. So they continued to postpone their happiness, working hard to save for their old age. They told me, when I retire,